Hi, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Welln'ish. Today we have a good friend of mine, Stephanie Mankarios. I've invited her here today to talk about everything motherhood and her very unique birth story. Steph is a mindfulness, yoga, and meditation teacher, and she does trauma-informed, somatic-based coaching. She also has a background in women's health, personal training, body work, and psychology. Currently, Steph lives in Montreal, but she's also lived in Silicon Valley, in Thailand, and loves to travel and spending time abroad. So welcome, Steph. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hey, so I wanted to jump into the first question, which is, how long have you wanted to be a mother?
So I started having baby fever when I was 23 years old. And I'm 34 years old now, so it's been like about 10 years. I just actually, when I started my yoga journey and I started to connect more deeply to my body and to myself, I started to have like simultaneously really intense baby fever.
What do you think what about yoga do you think brought that out in you?
I think so when I started my yoga journey, I started in Bali, and the way that it was taught to me was very much how I teach now, which is going inwards and paying attention to your internal experience. And I had never connected to my body prior to being in Bali and doing yoga there. And I think that because I was connecting to myself and I wasn't like suppressing anything anymore, I wasn't avoiding anything anymore, my personal nature is very much like motherly. And I think I just really connected to that because I was connecting to my trueness.
I like that. I remember you telling me once that Isabel, your osteo, was saying how you have very strong masculine qualities and feminine qualities. Would you say that when you really connected to the yoga, it brought you more in tune with the feminine, or do you feel like your masculine was taking over for a certain reason, or was it always balanced and then yoga just brought that out?
I think that I kind of realized in the last few years that I spent a lot of time actually resisting my feminine. I grew up in a Middle Eastern household, and there's boys and girls are treated quite differently. And I didn't realize how much that impacted me. And also just some of my personal experiences of growing up and interacting with guys and interacting with girls and just kind of feeling like I didn't belong with the girls in some ways. And I think that added to me kind of like denying my womanhood in a way. And I even like shaved the side of my head, and Isabel is actually the one who said, that's when she said, there's like a part of you that's denying your femininity. Like you even shaved the left side, which is considered like the feminine side of the body. And I think it's only been maybe like 3 years or so that I've really more deeply embraced my feminine side. And my masculine was very alive to protect my feminine, I think, for a long time. It was a lot more dominant in me, and it took me a lot of like surrender and relaxing to allow my femininity to shine more.
That's very interesting. Because I think you're well versed in this, would you be able to explain to the listeners what some, positive feminine qualities are and some positive masculine qualities?
Yeah. So the feminine is very much intuitive and in flow and in feeling, and in like more free. And the healthy masculine is very present and grounded and kind of like shows up and is disciplined and holds space for the feminine. And a really beautiful like analogy that I like to use that one of my teachers said once is the masculine is like the being that is sitting watching the flame of the candle, and the flame is like the feminine, and it's moving and fluctuating, and the masculine is sitting witnessing it and holding space for it to move. And
I really like that.
And we all have the masculine and the feminine within us, so it doesn't matter how you identify. Yeah.
Interesting. I definitely think I can relate to that. I feel like I don't really know why, but I definitely didn't like, I think it comes down to more just being in a more patriarchal society where value is put on certain things. And for me, I loved sports growing up. And so I really identified a lot with the masculine side, masculine qualities, like a lot of self-discipline and, achieving certain accolades. And then I find when I get older, and then obviously when you go to osteo school and they finally introduce all these concepts to you, and I read a few books on femininity and finally allowed myself to go there, and I feel like I have a healthier balance now. But I do find it pretty interesting to see how many women, mostly I feel like when you're kind of approaching the age of motherhood, it's like it overcomes you and you want to identify with it. And I do think that there are really, like you said, good, like healthy qualities in both that we should be nurturing. And anyways, I just thought that was a really interesting perspective that I'm happy that you shared with them, because yeah, I don't know. I just think it's an important thing to think about.
I think it's really difficult to connect to our healthy masculine because we live in a society that kind of reinforces the toxic masculinity, which is like overwork and like push yourself and drive yourself to exhaustion and don't listen to your body. And I think it's in some ways really tricky to connect to the healthy masculine that's able to kind of just like relax into the presence and show up in a way that is not extremist.
So true. I wish more men were open to therapy, because I just think that just allowing, there's so little. I just feel like men have a much harder time to be vulnerable. And that's something that I'm so grateful for as a woman, is that, we get together as communities and we share and we're more comfortable being vulnerable. And I just really hope to see the next generation evolve. And I think it's going in that direction, to be able to have men connect with the healthy feminine as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the issues that you had with fertility, because I don't know, anyone who's listening who knows me knows that I tell everyone that you gave me baby fever. I didn't really know. I didn't really have major thoughts about wanting to be a mom, because I was never in that spot in my life. And I remember when I met you and you just had this, this light about you when it came to motherhood, and it was contagious. Like, I went home every night where we would talk about it and be like, I need to have a baby right now. Still live with my parents at home. I don't even have a partner, but I need a baby in me. So I don't know. It always really touched me and made me feel for you that you had issues with fertility at the beginning. Like, it really just, I don't know. I was just wondering from your perspective what that felt like. And how you made sense of it and healed from it.
Yeah, I think that's a really great topic to talk about, because not enough people talk about it, and so many people struggle with it. So an ex-partner of mine and I tried to conceive for 2.5 years, and it didn't work. And we did every test possible. The doctors were like, there's nothing wrong with either of you. We have no idea why it's not working. We're going to label it as unexplained infertility. And we even tried insemination. We did it 7 times. Usually they do it 3 times and then you move on to in vitro. I was too scared to do in vitro. So we kept trying inseminations and it wasn't working. And you never think like when you're ready to have a baby or you're trying to have a baby, like, oh, I'm gonna not be able to, or it's not gonna happen. And literally like the first year we tried, I think 11 people around us got pregnant. And it was so painful to feel like something was wrong with my body, that it wasn't doing what it's meant to do. And I felt so happy for people when they got pregnant because I have baby fever and I think pregnancy is beautiful, and I was so happy for them, but also so sad for myself because it's like the way I like to explain it is that it's kind of like being really hungry and not being able to eat. There's like this biological feeling you have that's like so intense. For me, it was so intense. And it wasn't being like, the need was not being met. And I felt a lot of anger and resentment towards my body because I felt like, why are you not able to do what you're made to do? And I really identified with the diagnosis of like unexplained infertility for a really long time. And then eventually I decided I'm not going to accept that anymore because I really believe that the mind has so much power over the body. And so it took me time, but I started to like release that. And I also kind of stopped telling people that I had struggled with infertility because I felt like the more I would talk about it, the more it like reinforced in me that that was my truth. And so I just kind of intentionally wanted to shift out of that mindset. And when I got pregnant, I mean, it just kind of happened and I was in so much shock. Like I could not believe it. It was kind of like, how is this possible? There's like no way this, when I looked at the positive pregnancy test after looking at honestly like over 35 negative tests, I was just in disbelief for a long time. Actually, my entire pregnancy up until I was giving birth, I was like, is this really happening? And sometimes I still look at my baby, like he's 3 months old now. And I'm like, are you really here? Like, I really made you, this really happened in my body. And the way that I see it now is that the person I was trying to conceive with and we had a chemical incompatibility. And I don't think that that's like talked about very much. And I think it's a very real thing where your cells might not want to join. And so kind of having that understanding of it helps me feel less like something was wrong in my body.
He's the cutest little baby. Okay, so yeah, I really like that concept, the chemical incompatibility. I've never really heard those words together before, but for you, that helped you heal from not being able to conceive with your partner. And for you, was that indication that this was maybe not someone that you're supposed to conceive with, or how do you define chemical incompatibility?
I don't think it was that we were not supposed to have kids together. Like I don't see it that way. I'm not sure why there's a chemical incompatibility, but I wonder if it's just like in nature is like your cells would just not work well together. I have no idea.
yeah, I just was wanting you to maybe go over the timeline a bit. So you said, yeah, you gave birth 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And one thing that I know that you did was you put a lot of preparation into motherhood, what it would be like, preparing for your birth. And as a single parent, I know this was something that you mentioned to me. Did you find that the resources out there met your expectation? And what was it like trying to navigate all of that?
I found it very hard being pregnant as a solo pregnant person. I think there's so much support required through the process of pregnancy and childbirth and postpartum. And I don't think there's enough resources out there at all. And even all the women that I meet in person, and even the women that I interact with online in mommy groups that have partners, also feel this gap in society where there's not enough support. It's kind of extremely unnatural how we go about it in North America, and I'm sure some other parts of the world, but most of the world, most of the rest of the planet has an entire community around them to take care of them, to raise the baby. Like, you've probably heard the expression, it takes a tribe to raise a baby. And I think that it's such a time where you're wanting to be kind of enveloped and nurtured and taken care of. And I was really lucky to have my mom take care of me in my postpartum. She cooked and cleaned and took care, did so much to take care of me so that I could take care of my son. And that was such a gift. And it felt so nurturing to have my mother while I'm a new mother. It was a very healing experience. And I remember telling a doula I know, even we're two people and we're hustling, trying to take care of everything and take care of the baby and make sure we're fed and all these things. And I said, it takes 3 people for one baby. And she said, actually, research shows it takes 4 people for one baby. And most people are 2. And I just think that we need to do better as a society around supporting pregnant women and supporting, women in postpartum. It's such an important time in someone's life. And they're often kind of left alone, because even if you have a partner, that partner often goes back to work after a few days or a few weeks. And we need to be in community. And in order to feel good, even just reducing the rates of postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, it's so important to be well surrounded. And I would love for there to be more resources for women available.
I couldn't agree more. That's the number one theme that I hear from the women that I work with, is that they feel very isolated in postpartum. And I think I've already said this anecdote on another episode, but I was treating this man from Congo, and he was telling me how he doesn't understand how anyone has a baby, let alone more than one baby here. Because he was saying where he's from, if his mom needed to go do something, run an errand, pick something up, she just walked over to the neighbors, no questions asked, and plopped her baby in the living room. And there was never that culture or that feeling of feeling indebted for asking for help, for doing that. It's just what you do. It's there's much more of a community culture there, especially for raising kids, than there are here. And I definitely feel like now with technology, while it is connecting us, it's really not in a lot of ways. So now people will make less time than to actually come over and relieve you, because now we've connected on FaceTime or virtually, but you need a lot of hands-on help. And Yeah, I totally agree that we need more resources. I don't know how we can go about fixing that as a problem, but I was also curious because you mentioned that you felt like a lot of things were lacking, and what specifically was that for you? Did you have any major things that you noticed that were lacking? Like which areas?
That were lacking in terms of support?
Like of resources and support.
Resources?
Yeah.
I think just on a mental health level, and this has also been the experience of a lot of people who've shared with me, that because when you're pregnant, you have so many hormones, you know, that are, your body's changing, everything's changing, your reality's changing. Your mental health can really go through a lot. And especially if you're predisposed, like if you have a history of anxiety, depression, or other things, those things are going to come up, or are, you know, quite likely to come up when you're pregnant and in postpartum. And it's not really something that's addressed. And if you talk to your doctor, like the doctor is likely to recommend medication. There needs to be a little bit more sense of connection. I think that is what is lacking, is connection, and for women to feel like what they're going through is not like that they're not alone through what they're going through, and just to feel more sense of community. And I think generally as a society, we're very it's very
Individualistic.
like, yeah, exactly. So of course that's not going to change when somebody gets pregnant. So I think, you know, as a society at the start, we need to do better to, if we just look at the rates of, you know, mental health outside of pregnancy due to isolation, I think through COVID, it's really come up a lot more that a lot of people are struggling. And there's, as you were saying, because of technology, we're connecting more online, but we're not connecting as much in person. And we need, you know, eye contact, we need physical touch, we need togetherness.
So I know you're working on creating a platform to help and empower women. So without going into all of the details of your future plans, but like for you, what would that look like? What would it look like to be able to have support? What are some ideas that you have? What do you wish was accessible for every woman in postpartum?
So many things. I'm going to say it, and I'm going to keep saying it: more community. I think that the more community and connection a human being has, the more they're going to thrive, the healthier they're going to be, the better they're going to feel. So more of a sense of community, of people having resources for whatever it is they're going through, whether they need information about something and they don't know where to find it and what a reliable source is. And also being properly informed of what exists. So like osteopathy for pregnant women, acupuncture, you know, therapy. There's so many different ways that a woman can receive physical support and emotional support. And having a place, a safe space to speak, to share what she's experiencing, what she's struggling with, what she's going through, and know that she's not going to be judged, and to hear other women's experiences as well, and to know that she's not alone, and that and also a place to go to just feel that sense of community that exists in other countries. Like when somebody has a baby in most other parts of the world, the baby is being taken care of by the grandparents, the uncles and aunts, the cousins, the siblings, the neighbor. And here it's like you're alone with your baby all the time. You and your partner, if you have a partner, you by yourself, if you're single, you're with your baby all the time. And it's really unnatural. And even babies get sick of being with the same person all the time. They need diversity. They need to have different experiences and experience the world in different people's hands, literally.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, there has been coined the term COVID babies. Like so many moms come in, they're like, yeah, he or she is a COVID baby.
yeah.
Just not used to strangers, not used to being touched by anyone else. And hopefully there will be some studies done on this so we can get this stuff more on the forefront of what we're talking about. But yeah, I treat some people who are addicts, and whenever they talk to me about their experience in AA, it's like, God, we should all have these community groups where we share. Obviously, this is for a very specific purpose, but like moms, like just having that community group where you can go and share and laugh about your shared experiences. That's what Brene Brown always says will help you melt shame away. Like, I did this with my baby that I felt so much guilt or shame about. And then you hear someone else who did it, you laugh about it, and it can kind of just relieve that stress from you. But yeah, I wish, we had more community embedded in our society and talking about things. And I could not agree more about the importance of connection.
Yeah, and normalizing everything that someone's experiencing, because as you said, there's so much shame. It's like, is this normal? Is what I'm doing normal? Is what I'm feeling normal? And having the experience of being able to share with other people will help to dissolve, a lot of shame and doubt and insecurity that you can feel as a first-time parent or as a parent in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could not agree more. I wanted to move on to talk a little bit about your birth story. So I was wondering if you could share with the listeners why you chose to go with a midwife, why you chose a midwife, and just your experience in that, and then how you felt the birth went, surprises, outcomes, expectations. Or I guess we could start with start with midwife, why you chose midwife. Sorry, I'm just trying the doorbell, so my dog's barking. Why you chose with a midwife, and then move on to how you prepared, and then what you were expecting versus reality.
So I've been following midwives on Instagram for a really long time, and I've been watching women give birth, the full experience, the full visual experience on Instagram for a long time. And I assisted my cousin gave birth to 4 kids. I was there for 2. I was like right there with the doctor in between her legs, like seeing the whole thing happen. It was the most beautiful experience of my life. And I find birth so magical. And I really, really wanted to have a midwife because of just how much of a personalized experience it is. And we're lucky here in Quebec, it's part of the medical system. So it's covered by Medicare. Whereas I know that in the States, I think you have to find your own midwife. But midwives have existed for, forever. And I really wanted to have a home birth. And I was told that wasn't going to be possible because of COVID. So the second option was going to be at the birthing center, which was still a good option for me. I wanted a really calm, quiet environment, no lights, soft music, some essential oils. I wanted to give birth in the water. And so when I was assigned my midwife, actually the first midwife I had, she was really nice, but I didn't feel very connected to her. And I know that when you give birth, it's such a vulnerable experience and you absolutely need to feel safe and comfortable. And so I switched midwives, and the one that I got, I absolutely love. Like, I could not have gotten a better midwife. She was so calm and grounded and empathetic and knowledgeable and kind, and like I had the perfect midwife. Honestly, it was the most amazing experience. And yeah, so midwives meet with you for like your whole pregnancy. You're put on a wait list, and if you get a midwife, you could get one at the beginning of your pregnancy or at the end of your pregnancy. I got lucky and I got one at 3 months. And your appointments are like an hour long, so they're really checking in with you. How are you feeling? Do you have any questions? What would you like your birth to be like? What are you envisioning? And they also prepare you for if things don't go the way you're envisioning. So she spent quite a lot of time preparing me for what if I need to end up in the hospital? What if I need a C-section? I think she could sense that I was really wanting to kind of control the outcome of how my birth was going to go. And in order to minimize like the trauma that would come from having something unexpected happen, she spent a lot of time kind of trying to mentally prepare me for it going a way that was different than what I was hoping for. And to prepare for the birth, I did, I got a hypnobirthing book on Audible, which was amazing. And I thought I was going to be able to manage the pain really well for a number of reasons. One is I've been doing breath work and meditation, and yin yoga, which, you know, requires you to sit in discomfort and be present with it, for a really long time. And I thought that I was going to be able to sit with my contractions and be present with them. And that did not happen. It was about 500 times more painful than what I expected. Like, actually that much. I'm not exaggerating. It was unbearable for me. I also had like a unique situation where my cervix wasn't opening and my baby's head was moving down into the vaginal canal with my cervix kind of expanding like a balloon and not opening. So that might have contributed to the pain more than it should have. And I ended up having a home birth because my pain was so intense and I couldn't make it to the birthing center. I couldn't move. It took me a really long time to get from the couch to my bed. I gave birth on my bed. And my labor was 15 hours and I pushed for 90 minutes, but that felt like it went relatively quickly. I feel like I got really excited once everybody kept screaming, like, we could see his head. It's like, you're just like, oh my God, this is the last part, I can do this. Whereas when you're going through the contractions, you don't know how much longer it's going to go. It's like never ending. And mine were very intense from the start. It wasn't very gradual. It was quite intense from the beginning. What was surprising to me was how much I was not prepared to let go, to like surrender control. And it's the most out of control you could ever feel is being in labor. All these things are happening to your body and you have absolutely no control over it. And I'm somebody who I feel a lot of need to control what's happening to my body, and I know why I'm like that. And it terrifies me when something happens to me physically that I have no control over. And even just like if I bang myself and hurt myself, I'm like so devastated that something happened to my body. And I'm like, I'm really scared of kind of like, of things happening to my body. So to have this experience where it's so intense and you're so out of control was really something I wish I would have been more prepared for. I think the mental experience of not letting go also probably impacted how my body was literally not opening for the baby to come out, and caused more pain.
Do you think having gone through it once now will make you better capable of letting go for the next?
I hope so.
But no, I'm just like, not that you're beating yourself up, but you're like, you have a feeling like, oh, I wish I could have surrendered.
Yeah.
But I think there's no way of knowing or being able to prepare for what that pain is going to feel like. And it's going to feel so different for everyone.
Yeah.
I feel like now that you've really gone through it, you'll know that you'll want to surrender and give in, because you know what, purposeful pain feels like. But when it comes on so strong, I can only imagine that it must feel like, is something wrong? What is happening? Like, yeah.
Yeah, my midwife kept telling me, relax into the pain. And I was like, I can't. Like, I was so enraged because
stop telling me to relax.
Like really couldn't. Like, I was remembering everything I learned in the hypnobirthing. I was remembering all the breathing I've learned for the last 10 years and all the meditation and all. I was remembering. It wasn't like, oh, I forgot about all that while it was happening. Like, I was very much aware of that stuff. I just I couldn't
tap into it.
Yeah, at all. It was so intense for me.
Mm-hmm. So you used a midwife and also had a doula present. What role did each of those play, and why did you decide to have both of them present?
So the doula was actually a close friend of mine, and she really wanted to be at the birth, and it turns out, like, I just got lucky that she's also a doula. And I'm the first birth that she assisted, and she did an amazing job. And the doula is really there to support you, to like be by your side, to encourage you, to hold your hand and like caress your hair and give you water, and to in the case of if you're like giving birth in a hospital and you have a doula with you, I think the doula is really going to keep in mind what your intentions are for the birth and what's important to you, so that if you can't communicate that in the moment, the doula will for you. Mm-hmm. Because I was giving birth at home and I had a midwife who knew me really well. I didn't need my doula to do that for me, but I thought it was so supportive and I had like an amazing birthing experience, even though it was extremely painful physically. I had a beautiful like birthing experience. I had my mom and my friend who's a doula and my midwife and 2 birthing assistants. So I had like this tribe of women around me, and I felt extremely safe. I felt extremely supported, and to have somebody really know what to do while you're in labor is so key. And I think that people who have a partner and they're in labor, sometimes the partner doesn't know what to do or how to be supportive. And that's where a doula can be really helpful to do it herself, but also to kind of coach the partner to support the woman in labor as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really do feel intuitively that I would just want women around me going through that. I think I would want people who have been through it, who have been there, who know how to support someone who's going through it, know how to say the right things. And, there are very few men out there signing up for classes on like how to best support my wife going through this. And even if they have, it's just not the same as somebody who's had this shared experience, who has gone through it. Like I feel like I would really want someone there who has given birth. Like if you haven't given birth and you're telling me to relax and calm down, I would be like, you don't know what this feels like. So your birth was painful. how did everything go in terms of postpartum?
So because I had the my cervix was not opening, it caused something to happen. I'm not exactly sure what. I don't know if it was prolapse or not, but my pelvic floor felt like it was so heavy. I couldn't, like, it was so painful. I couldn't sit or stand or walk around for 14 days or 13 days. It was excruciating. Like, I would start crying, and it's actually through osteopathy that I was put back together, I guess. Like, good. I got treated. Good. And it was my gosh, what a difference. Like, I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have access to an osteopath. And yeah, your pelvic floor goes through such an intense experience, like being pregnant for 9 months and having that weight on it, and then pushing a baby out. And so that's the other thing actually that's really important, is to have more awareness and knowledge and information around pelvic floor care for women. I think that's so important. Yes. And then my breastfeeding experience was very difficult. So it was very, very painful. It felt like somebody had poured acid on my nipples. I would cry every single time I saw that my son was hungry, because I was anticipating the pain. And I was so devastated because I wanted to have such a beautiful breastfeeding experience. I wanted to like breastfeed and be connected to my baby and feel good and relax, and for it to be a bonding experience. And instead I was like dreading it every single time. And I didn't want to give up. And I brought him to see a lactation consultant, and I was told that there was no concern for a tongue tie. So a tongue tie is when, I know you know what it is, but for everyone else, the tongue tie is when the skin underneath the tongue is either too tight or too short, and so it restricts the movement of the tongue. And so when a baby breastfeeds, their tongue does a wave-like motion, and they're not able to do that if they have a tongue tie. And also developmentally in the womb, it causes their palate to be really high, like a dome shape. So that also affects, like, when you're inserting your breast and your nipple into their mouth, instead of it being sandwiched between their tongue and their palate, it's kind of being thrown up and down. So it's causing more irritation. So I continued to suffer for like a total of 6 weeks, I think. I don't know how I did it. It was, I was like taking I was in so much pain.
I don't know how you did it.
And then I brought him to a breastfeeding clinic where they specialize in this, and they were shocked that he had gained so much weight considering how much pain I was in. And they looked at him and they said he has anterior and posterior tongue tie, and it's severe, and that the only way to resolve it is to clip the skin, which is like really scary to hear as a parent who's, you know, very empathetic to their child. But it took 3 seconds. He cried a bit, and as soon as I put him on my breast, he relaxed and he was fine. And about a week later, it was a completely different experience breastfeeding. I had no more pain. And it became like the beautiful experience I was hoping for. And now it's my favorite part of being a mother, is like, I'm so looking forward to feeding him every time he's hungry now, because it's like such a beautiful bonding experience, and I love it. So those were the two difficult parts of my physical recovery.
Well, thank you for sharing, because I find, you know, people just kind of say, oh, postpartum can be hard, but it's really difficult to conceptualize what that is. But I think it's important to hear, for people to be able to hear that you suffered for 14 days with your pelvic floor. And then on top of that, you felt like somebody was pouring acid on your nipples for probably, I don't know what the timeline was for that, but that is severe on top of hormones that are wired to make you less happy. I don't know if anyone out there has really had physical pain to the point where they can't stand for half a month. That's a very hard thing to go through. And I'm also just so happy for you that you were able to get to the point to experience breastfeeding this way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely, like we keep saying, is like connection and talking about it more. I think it just needs to happen more. It's such a common theme, is the lack of support with breastfeeding and feeding and the amount of shame women feel surrounding it. So
mm-hmm.
yeah. Thank you for sharing. So I wanted to ask you, so one of the doulas that I interviewed, she kind of coined this term. I don't know if it was hers or not, but she had a lot, like, it felt very impactful for her. She did a lot of healing during her pregnancy, the whole idea of passing from maiden to mother. And I was just wondering if that was something that you felt like you had to heal, or something unexpected, or what that shift felt like for you, what it meant for you.
I feel like because I wanted a baby for so long, like I had thought about the experience so much that I feel like I was pretty well prepared for the shift from being like a solo person to being a parent and being responsible for another human being. I could totally understand how, if you are not prepared for that, it's intense and it's a lot, because your entire reality is different. Everything, like how you sleep, what goes on in your mind, your experience of trying to eat a meal, your like how to do everything you do is different, and your time is never yours again. So like, even if you have time alone, you're still on a clock, because at some point you have to, like, you have a timeline of how much time you have to yourself. And I think that's the hardest part. And one of the things that most of us struggle with is, my time is not mine anymore. And if you're not ready for that, that's that could be very devastating, because you've known your reality to be the way it is your entire life, however long that is. And suddenly something significant changes forever, because you're always going to have this person, even when they're older, they're going to need you. And I feel like I feel so much more, I don't want to say whole, because I don't think that I was like incomplete before. But I feel so much more like fulfilled, I guess is the right word, having him, because I've wanted him for so long. Mm-hmm. And I feel like what has shifted in me is this really intense protectiveness that has also caused me to become more protective of myself, which is a really positive thing. So I've like developed more boundaries, and I'm a lot more like aware of what I'm gonna let myself experience or accept in my life, and how I go about things, I think is different. And that's the primary thing that has shifted from having this person that I need to protect and look out for. And I want to set the right example and be doing that for myself as well. And it kind of happened simultaneously. Mm. It's kind of like actually the healthy masculine in me stepped up.
I was just going to say that. So would you say this relates back to the healthy masculine? Yeah. Oh, good. So for my last question, what I wanted to ask, I feel like you'd probably be one of the best people to answer this, is a message that I see all the time in the wellness world, online or wherever, is that before you become a mother, you have to heal like everything about you. And like, don't have a kid until you've done your inner work, until you have, a lot of the time the message that how I receive it is until you have no more flaws and you're completely enlightened. And I just don't really think that that is a place that we can all get to, like as a human race. And I think that you can still be a mother and do healing at the same time. Anyways, I was just curious what your perspective was, if you felt that messaging, like a strong messaging towards you, how you dealt with that, or just any insight or thoughts or beliefs you had about it.
Yeah, I think, as you said, it's unrealistic to do like all the healing before you have a kid, because I don't think healing ever ends. I mean, it depends what you've been through, and if you've had trauma and if you have complex trauma. I think that it's kind of like an ongoing thing that can happen in the background, and maybe you go through periods of time in your life where it's more at the forefront of your experience, of your attention, to be noticing like, wow, I get really triggered when this happens. Let me look at that. Let me go inside. Maybe there's something in me that needs to heal around this. But I think that it's impossible for that to happen completely alone. And I think this is like the kind of like the funny thing about, somebody once said, like, it's easy to be a monk because you're alone and you're never triggered and you're never faced with, difficult things. You're like meditating and you're by yourself kind of, and in a peaceful environment. And so it's being in relationship, or being in relationship with a partner, being in relationship with your family, being in relationship with your kids, is going to cause things to come to the surface. And so those moments are opportunities to look inside and to see if, I think there's a bit of a misconception around healing that it's like you have to attain this thing, but it's more like, how can I find more inner freedom? If something is hurting me or triggering me or causing my life to not operate in a way that I would love for it to, and that's happening because of pain that I'm experiencing that I'm not dealing with, and I'm, we're all running away from our pain in some way, shape, or form, and there's healthy doses of that. It's important to binge watch Netflix and, have things that we do to not think about what's happening inside. And I think it's also good to have balance and be able to look at ways that we can find more freedom inside. And that happens through curiosity and self-compassion. And I think having a child will especially bring those things up, because you're facing your inner child at the same time.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm definitely happy that I asked you that question. So just to wrap things up, I was wondering if you could share with the listeners what kind of services you offer, what kind of people tend to gravitate you, or what kind of people that you work with, how they can get in touch with you, how they can work with you.
Yeah. So I usually offer meditations online, and right now I'm not, because I have a baby to take care of, but I do have meditations that are pre-recorded that are online on my website at stephaniemankarios.net. And there's a variety of different topics, and there's mindfulness meditations. And then I also work one-on-one, mostly with women. And it's trauma informed, and it's somatic based. So there's a lot of going into the body and noticing what's happening in the body. And it's one-on-one sessions that I do virtually. And you can find me on Instagram at Stephanie Mankarios, and you can also contact me there. You can also contact me on my website.
Perfect. I'm going to link all of that on the podcast and on social media. So
Awesome.
they'll have easy time finding you.
And I'm also, as you mentioned, putting together a program for women to be more supported in their pregnancies and postpartum. So stay tuned for that.
I can't wait for it. Well, Steph, thank you so much for joining us. It was such a pleasure to have you on. I think a lot of women will be able to feel heard after hearing this episode.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was my pleasure. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.